Power doesn't corrupt everyone, but absolute power changes how fear works. This is not a rumor. This is not fiction. This is the true story of 7 real decisions made by Kim Jong Un. Decisions that slowly transformed an entire country into a nation ruled by fear. When his father died, many experts believed the system would control him. A young leader, limited experience, surrounded by powerful figures from the old regime. At first, Kim Jong Un appeared calm, almost invisible. But behind the scenes, something was changing. He wasn't preparing to follow the system. He was preparing to break it and rebuild it in his own image. The first decision didn't target an enemy abroad. It didn't involve the military. It began inside the family. Kim Jong Un's uncle was not just a relative. He was one of the most powerful men in North Korea. For years, he had managed key economic projects, maintained ties with China, and acted as a stabilizing force inside the regime. Many insiders believed the real balance of power depended on him. In fact, some believed he was quietly guiding the young leader from behind the curtain. That belief would soon disappear. In 2013, during a public meeting, the uncle was suddenly arrested. No warning, no explanation. The cameras were rolling. Days later, the announcement was made. He had been executed. There was no long trial, no public defense, just silence. This moment changed everything. It wasn't only the removal of a powerful figure, it was the destruction of a rule that had existed for decades. Family comes first. From that moment on, every official understood the truth. Loyalty was no longer enough. History didn't matter. Blood meant nothing. Power now belonged to one person, and one person alone. But removing a family member was only the signal. The real transformation began next. Kim Jong Un turned his attention to the inner circle. Senior generals, party officials, intelligence leaders. Many of them had risen under his father's rule. At first, the changes were quiet. A general was suddenly replaced. A minister stopped appearing in public. Then the disappearances increased. Some officials were removed from office overnight. Others vanished completely. Their names erased from records. Their images removed from state media. No explanations were given. This created something more powerful than loyalty: uncertainty. Every meeting became dangerous. Every conversation felt risky. Every silence carried meaning. People stopped asking questions, not because they agreed, but because they wanted to survive. Slowly, the system adapted. Decisions were no longer debated. Orders were followed without hesitation. Fear had replaced trust, and obedience became the only form of safety. Once the inner circle was silenced, the next target became clear. Not the military, not foreign enemies, reality itself. In North Korea, information does not flow, it is designed. There is no independent media, no free press, no outside perspective. Television channels repeat the same images. Newspapers print the same headlines. Radio broadcasts the same voice. Every screen tells the same story. Kim Jong Un understood something many leaders never fully grasp. You don't need to control people with force if you can control what they believe. Over time, the population stopped comparing because there was nothing left to compare with. No alternative narratives, no second opinions, no questions. Even silence became suspicious. This wasn't just censorship, it was psychological control. When reality itself is filtered, resistance doesn't disappear, it never even forms. While the world focused on what could be seen above ground, something else was quietly expanding below. Underground bunkers, reinforced tunnels, hidden passageways connecting government buildings and military sites. This wasn't paranoia, It was preparation. In the event of war, airstrikes, or total collapse, Kim Jong Un would not be visible. He would disappear into a system designed to survive without him being seen. Reports suggest entire underground networks exist, allowing movement without detection, protected from surveillance and attack. Above ground, people face shortages and uncertainty. Below ground, the leadership plans for survival. This is how power protects itself, not by standing firm, but by always having a way out. A system like this doesn't expect peace, it expects crisis, and it plans accordingly. But Kim Jong Un's strategy was never limited to his own country. As internal control tightened, his focus shifted outward. Nuclear tests, ballistic missile launches, carefully timed demonstrations of power. Each test triggered global reactions, emergency meetings, new sanctions, rising tension. But that response was part of the design. These tests weren't just about weapons, they were about leverage. Kim Jong Un understood that fear works on an international level too. A single launch could dominate global headlines. A single test could force the world to pay attention. Sanctions damaged the economy. Ordinary citizens paid the price. But the message was clear. He was willing to absorb pressure as long as the world remained uncertain. In global politics, unpredictability became his shield. While pressure increased outside, life at the top followed a very different path. In a country facing shortages, the leadership lived behind closed doors. Luxury watches, expensive cars, imported food unavailable to ordinary citizens. This contrast wasn't hidden, it was accepted. Power had created two separate realities, one for the people and one for those at the top. There was no accountability, no public questioning, no visible limits. Over time, this separation became normal. When power remains unchecked long enough, inequality stops being shocking and starts being expected. And then came the most unsettling pattern of all. Kim Jong Un himself began to vanish. Weeks passed without public appearances, no official statements, no explanations. Rumors filled the silence. Illness, internal conflict, even death. But the silence was never permanent. Suddenly, he would reappear, calm, confident, smiling. Nothing was addressed, nothing was explained. The message was subtle, but powerful. Fear didn't require constant presence. The system worked on its own. Even in absence, control remained intact. These were not random decisions. They followed a clear pattern. Remove internal threats, control information, prepare escape routes, project fear outward, live without accountability. Together, these choices built something far stronger than force. They built a system where silence is safer than speech, where loyalty is never guaranteed, and where fear does the governing, even when the leader is not in the room. This is how a nation becomes ruled by fear.